Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Welcome back once again.
Thank you guys for being with us and being part of this family. Before we get going, please do go ahead and subscribe if you haven't subscribed and click the bell. So hopefully you'll get a notification or two, maybe over a decade or two.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So we see, will the stock market's 2021 returns crush the 2020s? Well, my answer to that is, in reality, about half of Americans don't give a crap. Is the bottom line. When you look at the percentage of Americans that own stock, it's been decreasing, especially ever since the collapse of 2008. And talking to some of my friends that I deeply respect, that have done a lot of analyzing, as well as going in with intuition, both Cindy and I, we feel that we may be talking about the great crash of 2021.
Yes, I do feel we're going to be talking about that. So we might have to get caught up on these things.
And when you think about everything that's gone on right now, all the records that are being set in so many different ways, and just everything that the average person has to cope with, such as the inability to work or having their small business shut down, it's just overwhelming for so many people right now. It really, really is. And this shows how this world, to me, is really geared towards just those really of the upper echelon, so to speak.
Well, it's so much about the almighty dollar, and he who has the gold makes the rules right now.
It sure is the case. With the lockdown situation, it's caused so many people to struggle. There's records falling in every way, shape, or form. And we see here a record number of billion-dollar disasters struck the U.S. in 2020. Nation saw its fifth warmest year on record. Of course, this is out of NOAA. But there's many sources talking about this data that just came out. And, what it shows, and they're going to blame it, the mainstream will blame it on climate change. We know, there's this program, this automatic programming that we get with the mainstream. We don't even have to listen to them. It's just press the button on any of their foreheads and you know what they're going to say.
I think that's a pretty funny visual, but it's true.
It is true. It's exactly, it's always going to have this slant. And again, I go back to childhood and, like listening to my mother, or my dad wouldn't speak too much, but my mom would always, be like, be so thankful you're here in the best country in the world, et cetera, et cetera. Thank God you're not in Russia or China where you can't speak a word. Well,
Right.
there was a Rammstein song I've said many times, we're all living in America. Soon we'll be all singing a song, we're all living in China.
Right. I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now that's kind of concerning.
Yeah. But as far as now they say climate by the numbers, billion-dollar disasters, you're going down. Now this is all natural, well, quote-unquote natural disasters. We see one wildfire event, western wildfires focused across California, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington. Then we have the drought and heat wave event, summer and fall, across the western and central U.S., 3 tornado outbreaks, including Nashville tornado and Easter outbreak, 7 tropical cyclones, and 10 severe weather events. And, we just had a busy year. And here's the damages when you look at it in the locations. And we will get back to making videos about best locations, and we've been doing a lot of research, and we've just been trying to keep up with everybody that we're working on a daily basis. So it's been a lot to keep up with. U.S. $20 billion weather and climate disasters, and you can see the locations, but they total approximately $95 billion for these 22 events. So when you're talking best places, you could see that, my favorite places to be would be along the Gulf or along the ocean. But, here we have all the cyclones that hit. So then, a lot of times it gets to be unaffordable. When I was looking for a house in Florida before, I found some houses that were priced right. They looked good to me. They needed some work, but I was okay with that. But then when you saw that you couldn't get insurance for them for flood insurance, or that the flood insurance might cost you, 10% of the house, 15% of the house every year, that's prohibitive for many people. Not all. And if you could pay cash, then, you could get by without the insurance and roll your dice.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to weigh and measure.
And we look at Texas here, central Texas and southern Texas. You have hailstorms that came in, all sorts of severe weather, tornadoes. Now, Tornado Alley is shifting, guys. So we used to think Tornado Alley, the first state that comes to mind is Oklahoma. It has been shifting eastward. So that's something that's progressing. We know the middle part of the country, because we get these clashes, it all is about the jet stream, how far down it goes when it dips. And so we tend to get the most violent storms kind of in the central area. And that is something, again, to keep in mind. Now, the wildfires in the West were absolutely nothing to sneeze about. They were scary this year. Colorado hit records, as well as California, for like the third year in a row. It might even be the fourth year in a row they've set records now. So when you're looking at this, you could see where the most expensive natural disasters have taken place. And there again, that could give you an answer to, where should I go? Well, you might look at this and say, well, Maine looks good. New Hampshire and Vermont look good. Montana seems okay. Or, North Dakota, maybe North Minnesota, or maybe the upper peninsula of Michigan, which is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. I really liked that area. That was beautiful. But they're cold. And, food production will be challenging, short growing season. And they're going to get colder if everything that we all believe is going to be allowed to happen.
So everywhere you look, you're going to face some kind of a conundrum, but it's kind of like choose your conundrum.
Yes, as we've been saying, pick your poison. And then again, as I've said, I have so many friends that are in Florida or they're, on the Carolinas, right on the coast. And hey, if anything comes straight for me, a hurricane, whatever, a Cat 5, I'll deal with it because I enjoy my day. And I'm going to keep enjoying my day, and I'm not going to budge. And that's good for you, and everybody has to make up their mind on what they're going to do. And then, of course, I think the biggest question right now is geopolitical. And, that's where we're dancing on the fence, looking at, seeing how this shakes out, how new boundaries are drawn up. And that is actually our number one. Our number one prerequisite, as Cindy was saying to me just before we started making this, show me where I'm going to have the most personal freedom, and that's where I'm going to go, and I'll deal with anything else.
I sure will. That's where my priorities lie. I want to have control of my body. I want to have control of what I eat. And, I will. I'll deal with everything else on the planet. Give me those two things, and I'll be happy.
And we've been talking about landslides every single day. We see at least 12 killed, 18 injured. 2 large landslides hit Java and Indonesia. One of the places in my mind that is one of the most dangerous places would be Indonesia, because you have earthquakes, you have the possibility of tidal waves, you get landslides, you get massive floods. When you look at it, it's a very rich, fertile area. So yeah, you get plenty of water to grow food. The soil is overall pretty good to grow food. Yet, this stuff happens all the time. So it's just, there is no perfect place. Thailand's been hammered. Record rains hit southern Thailand. Seems like we've been saying that every week, leaving 3 dead, more than 58,000 households affected by floods.
We do say that quite often, and that's really sad.
Thailand, as well as Vietnam, they've been super hammered. Where there's water, there's more and more and more. And eventually it's going to make it, and we've been talking about it, the crop situation. There's a serious food issue developing. 6.1 over in Argentina, by the way, at intermediate depth. And this one, thankfully, did not take any lives. And we have an intense cold wave that's bringing rare snowfall to Taiwan as well. And Taiwan doesn't usually get an awful lot of snow, but here you go. So the second blast of very cold air and snow to hit the country since the end of December 2020. And a third wave is expected on Monday, January 11th. But, again, this is part of a couple of things going on. It's that sudden stratospheric warming up in the Arctic, which then helps to even weaken the jet stream even more so that it plunges even farther down than typical.
Yeah, getting very, very cold.
And when we look back to history, we see major drought in Middle Ages could have parallels to climate change today. Well, I don't think that it was caused by their cars.
I don't think so.
Unless, history is that covered up. And with mud floods and stuff, well, you got to wonder. Maybe they had flying cars in and were taught totally erroneous history.
I know, I wouldn't be shocked if all this information came out in the next day or two. I would be more like relieved thinking, finally, the truth.
So we see similarities between about 720 years ago and what's happening now. And what happens is things abruptly change, and we are in that period of abrupt change. What did happen also, though, back then in the 1300s, 1310s, is a great famine in 1315 to 1321. And when we see what's happening, David, Adapt 2030, Christian, Ice Age Farmer, they've been talking about this in more depth. We cover this stuff, but they get into a lot more depth on it. Food price inflation accelerates for 7th consecutive month, and then you bring in to the mix all the culling of animals. China lost half of its pigs, so half of its pork production gone. So all this is obviously pointing in one direction.
Oh, it is. And, it really makes one want to just grab land and be able to take care of your own food. But then you have to think about the geopolitical issue and put the brakes on that. So,
well, don't worry, because the world's largest insect farm is going to be built in Illinois amid signs of soaring food inflations. So, chocolate dipped mealworms, things like that. Maybe some spicy crickets stir fried.
I know they're going to do it. They're going to do that. It's gross.
Well, this is going to be for feeding the animals that humans will eat. Now, I shared with you guys that I got from the guides, I think it was in the spring, that 2021, they told me, don't eat meat. That's what they told me. Everybody's going to do what they want to do. I got the impression it's partly about ascension, because meat is very heavy and it weighs you down. It also, can impact you spiritually and emotionally. If you're getting more sensitive, you might actually feel the pain and suffering of the animal. The other thing, which I think they were alluding to, is that it's not necessarily going to be a safe source of protein anymore. That there's other things that are going on. And we've seen bird flu, we've seen swine flu, we've seen all sorts of other plagues upon the animal world. And I kind of got the feeling that that's what they were alluding to.
Yeah, there's a lot of really important things that we have to take into consideration about what we put in our bodies.
Well, just to give you a for instance, too, because, I've done some seriously heavy lifting, and I've done it as a vegetarian, and I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm just giving you facts. Everybody free, do whatever you want. Do what you want. But if you take in whey protein, which comes from milk, it's the most complete protein. It's assimilated by the body far faster than eating meat that has to be broken down. And in the case of beef and, like, say, lamb and the heavier meats that will actually stay in your system for weeks before they're fully expelled. When I started supplementing with whey shakes, that's when I got stronger and grew a lot more muscle. And I used to be 75 pounds heavier than I am now, and used to, squat over 500 pounds and bench press over 400 pounds as a vegetarian.
Right. So you got to wonder, when you get this information in that says you have to have meat, where is that information coming from? And, is it in your best interest?
And again, I'm not going to try to get everybody to convert to being vegans, but because everybody is different and people are going to do things at their own pace, and that's fine. Just saying that, you don't actually need meat. You need all your essential amino acids. You need B12, which can be, gotten again in either eggs, or you could get it through other means as well, cheese and dairy and the like. And you could always supplement with it as well. So, you don't really need meat. And it's also just to give people a little bit of a reassurance in these times of shortage, because, there's going to be shortages out there. So, we have big containers of protein powder that I've stockpiled just to cover protein shortages as well. So, between having a shake and then we have tons of rice, beans, lentils, to get by for a long time, we have all the bases nutritionally covered, so we'll be fine. And I just wanted to help you guys out with thinking longer term, stockpiling of food, which, at some point, who knows if that'll end up being, I won't even say it, pirated away from us, so to speak. We don't know what it's going to look like exactly, but we have a pretty good idea. Now, Easter Island, you remember, as a kid, I remember thinking, why would people just put these big statues of heads looking out over the sea? And they talked about Easter Island basically collapsing, again, food issues, and cannibalism is even something that they talked about happened there. Maybe not so. Again, and one of the things was, too, when they finally dug down, they discovered, it's not just a head. Actually, the head is just, a third of what's there. So the other question, what happened? That this got buried so deep. What actually happened? Or did it make it through some sort of pole shift with crustal displacement event? Is it a mud flood? Well, you might think about mud flood if you look at how far down that's buried. And, there again, how old is it? Because I don't trust all the dates they give us.
No, I don't trust the dates either. And looking at that soil there, I really feel a strong mud flood situation happening with that.
So, they found pigment pits after the deforestation of Easter Island. And so they reject the earlier presumed societal collapse. A new study on the prehistory of Easter Island, Rapa Nui, by an international team of scientists and archaeologists from Mosgard Museum in Denmark, Kiel University in Germany, and University of Pompeu Fabra in Spain, has discovered prehistoric pits filled with red pigment on Easter Island. The researchers revealed that the production of reddish pigment continued as an important aspect of cultural life of the island inhabitants, despite drastic changes to the ecosystem and environment. An earlier hypothesis, presented by Jared Diamond in his book Collapse in 2005, assumed that the clearance of vegetation and overpopulation resulted in erosion, shortage of resource and food, and finally in the collapse of society. And I'm just hit by looking at these, and all this time, like growing up, all we saw was heads, and look at, they got torsos. They even got arms there. That really just changes the whole perspective on this. Easter Island in the South Pacific was probably discovered by Polynesians around the 8th or 9th century AD. The island's famous for its unique stone sculptures called moai. The new data, however, presented in the Journal of the Holocene suggests a different story. So, the Easter Island people also produce reddish pigment made from red ochre. It's been found applied to rock paintings, petroglyphs, moai, as well as archaeological burial contexts. When the presence of pigment was well known, the source and possible production process was not well understood. Over the last few years, archaeologists have been excavating and conducting scientific studies on 4 pit locations, suggesting there was a large-scale pigment production on the island. The pits were rich in fine particles of iron oxides, hematite, and megamite, which have bright reddish color. Geochemistry, microcharcoals, and phytolith analysis indicate that the minerals were heated, possibly to obtain brighter color. Some of the pits were covered with a lid, indicating the pits were used for both pigment production and storage. So an analysis of the phytolifts, which is the microscopic pant opals and diatoms, microscopic algae, from the pits on Easter Island, was carried out. And so they go on, and basically the presence of grasses is interpreted as part of the fuel for heating the pigment. And they date this between 1200 and 1650. And the site where most of the pits were found, some of the pits were located on top of palm root casts. This indicates pigment production took place after the clearing and burning of the former palm vegetation. This indicates that even though the palm vegetation had disappeared, the prehistoric population of Easter Island continued the pigment production on a substantial scale. This is in contrast to the earlier hypothesis that the clearance of the vegetation resulted in societal collapse. So it's getting rewritten here again. And, you have to wonder, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. Couldn't they just survive on fish alone pretty much? And, water catchment, or I'm not sure what they have as far as rivers there. But then I'm looking at the timing. And so if they're talking like around this time, 1650, that starts to get me thinking about the maps of California that show it basically just islands. And, as we shared with you guys, when we were in Nevada, we found right on the border with California, very close to Death Valley, sponge. And we found shells that were fossilized, but not really. I don't think they were thousands of years old. I would believe maybe 350, 400 years old. I don't think they're thousands and thousands or millions of years old. And that area, which is at between 2,500 and 3,500 feet, was underwater. There's no doubt that was underwater. So that gets me wondering if there was a mud flood somewhere around, 1550 to 1650, somewhere in that range.
Oh, most definitely. What we hear now is I feel we're getting little drips of truth, and we're going to be hearing more and more truth. So again, even though we're not getting all the information here, we're getting more. And also we had coral. We found coral in Nevada too. So pretty interesting stuff.
And I don't know if we still have it or if we left it at Cindy's mom, but I found a molar that looked human, but it looked like 3 or 4 times the size of a human molar on that property there. And it got me thinking about, what?
Yep.
The legends of the giants.
Yep. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, our history's not what we've been told, guys. I think that, we go through much quicker and more intense rapid change than has been led to believe that may or may not be totally natural. We've talked about this. Look at the Kardashev scale. For those of you that are like, what's that? Just go Google the Kardashev scale, and I'll leave it at that for this part, as I've done videos on it before, and many others have talked about this. Interesting stuff. Well, as always, make sure you are subscribed. Thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Anybody that needs to set a time for a session with us or wants a Vedic chart done, reach out to us at EEARTS at Proton Mail or evolutionaryenergyarts at gmail.com. Thanks for your patience and us getting back to you with that as well.
Yes, thank you a lot for your patience. We appreciate it. God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.